and welcome to Inner Circle Guidance. Today we're going to be doing a collective reading, but for those of you who are new to the circle, hello and welcome. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I post new videos every single day. If you're looking for daily short tarot readings, check out my Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. If you're looking for personal services or personal readings, I offer them through my website, innercircleguidance.com. Let's find out what the circle needs to know today. We have the Seven of Wands, we have the Fool, we have the Star, we have the Four of Cups, we have the Emperor, we have the Devil on the bottom of the deck. Some of us have a mindset right now that has kind of been holding us back. And this is actually something that is going to seem, and it's ironic actually, because it's going to seem insignificant until I point it out to you, which is funny because that's kind of what the entire energy of the reading is. Let's start with the basics here. The Devil card is about having false mindsets. It can be hyperfixation or obsession. It can be chaining yourself to an idea or a situation that you have the power to free yourself from, but either you don't recognize it or you intentionally put on the blinders and chain yourself to this idea that is kind of keeping you bogged down and keeping you stuck. The Devil's also ruled by Capricorn, which is a very ambitious zodiac sign. Capricorns have a tendency sometimes to fall out of balance when it comes to their work and home life balance. They have a tendency sometimes to be so fixed on their ambition and so fixed on their career and their success that they sort of forget everything else. They're very much a sign that hyperfixates on things in their most negative polarity. And I'm seeing that energy is present right now. I'm seeing that you're stepping into this new era of your life. Now, this could be something major, as in you are literally stepping into a new era and a whole bunch of changes happening around you. Or you could be stepping into a new chapter, or you could be stepping into just something that's some sort of new beginning in general. And it's having you kind of have this different mindset. It's bringing in new energies. The universe is aligning things to you so that you can manifest the things that you've been hoping and wishing for and praying for. But I'm seeing that some of these mindsets, this thing that's been stuck here, you've sort of been battling it this whole time. And you see it as this bigger problem of not being able to make the progress that you want as quickly as you want, or you feel stuck, or you feel like you can't balance your work life or your home life or all the different aspects of the different things that you're manifesting all at the same time. And you feel like it's a constant battle of trying to stay focused, trying to have enough time in the day, trying to achieve the things that you want, and you feel like you just keep hitting these sort of obstacles and challenges. But it's funny because you've received the guidance, but you haven't understood it. Some of you, it could be because of this sort of stubborn mindset. The Emperor and the Devil are both very stubborn energies. It could be this sort of getting so caught up in your logical side and focusing and hyperfixating on your success in a way that you're only seeing the big ticket issues. You're only seeing the big overall arching themes. And some of these smaller things and some of these smaller guidances and these smaller pushes that the universe and your spirit guides have been sending you have been rejected. Not intentionally. It's because you're in this mindset where a lot of these things seem insignificant. But I'm going to open up your eyes here a little bit. A lot of you who are really focusing on trying to move forward, what I mean by focusing on the big ticket issues is that you're only seeing the overall outcome. So for example, I use the idea of writing a lot because writing a book, for example, takes a long time and it's something you can do mostly by yourself. Let's say you want to write a book. Your overall theme and overall outcome is you have to write, you have to get the chapters done, you have to edit, you have to write the book, you have to get the book done, right? But a lot of you have this mindset that you have to, in order to achieve this goal, you have to make these huge leaps and bounds. The progress has to be so substantial. It has to be so massive and easily recognizable. What's happening is that because you're in that mindset, you think that the little progress that you can make is so insignificant that either you're not recognizing it, or you think it's so insignificant that you're not doing it. So for example, when I got back into writing, I had this idea, and this was like many months ago. I had this idea that in order to get back into writing, I had to create the atmosphere that I had back when I was writing all the time, many years prior to that. Because when I grew up, I wrote all the time. I wrote literally for hours every single day. And then as I got older, I shifted into other realms of storytelling. I thought that in order to make progress, I needed to sit down and write for at least an hour every single day, because all the big people tell you that. Shonda Rhimes says you're not a writer if you don't write every day. And that kind of gets us stuck in our head about what success is, and it gives us a perception of what progress in success is and what perfect is in terms of success. We get caught up in the perfectionism of the idea of, well, in order for me to make progress, I have to make these huge leaps and bounds. I have to write for an hour every single day. Well, here's the problem with that. When you're trying to change a habit, it takes about 60 days before it actually sets in as a habit. That's approximately 2 months worth of time. Number one, when you're shifting things to such a huge degree, that is something like writing for every day, which sounds actually, in the overall arching outcome of things, sounds like a small amount of time. But you've got to think, you only have so many hours in a day. If you're not used to dedicating that particular hour to something, whether it's writing or anything else that you're trying to do, your entire schedule changes, especially if you're somebody like me who's doing many things all at the same time. It takes at least about a week to 2 weeks before any sort of change in schedule like that even starts to become at all completely maintainable, because you start realizing that all these other factors go into it. So what would happen is that, let's say I got really busy one day and I only had 30 minutes to write. My mindset would be, oh, well, 30 minutes isn't long enough to really get anywhere, because I have to get into the mindset of writing. I have to pick up where I left off, and I have to get into it and start writing. And so what would happen is, if I didn't have exactly an hour, because that was the perception of what I gave myself, and that was the standard that I gave myself, and that was my measurement for my success and my measurement for progress, I would then be like, well, it's too insignificant enough that it's not going to matter. So I wouldn't end up writing. It took me about 2 weeks of that before I realized how that was not working. And I realized that the reason I was able to write for hours at a time back then, number one, was I was much younger. I had less things going on. Number two, it was because I was already working that muscle. It was already a habit. So typically for something like writing, you have to get into what I call the writer brain and the writer mode. You have to sit down and you have to kind of work your way up to this mindset where you're able to really focus. And it's the same as when you first start meditation. You have to work your way up to not having monkey mind, where your brain just wanders to wherever. It's a muscle. You have to work up to it. It's just like you can't start off your workout routine if you haven't worked out at all in months with, I'm going to do 100 push-ups a day. No, your muscles are going to get tired. That might work for the first 1, even 3 to 5 days, but then your arms are going to be so tired and it's going to be so unsustainable that you're just going to stop. This new chapter you're stepping into is all about learning balance. It's about understanding transactional energy, and I've talked about this in other readings. Your transaction and your currency is your energy and your time. That's the universal language. It's the universal currency. But if you are measuring your time and your currency by measurements that are not working for you, and you're in this mindset that only giant progress is progress, that only giant progress is significant, you miss out on a lot of these other opportunities. Because what I realized, because I was tracking my writing for those first 2 weeks when I first started picking it up again, when you think that the small things don't matter and they're insignificant and so you don't do them, Number one, you're living for the outcome. You're forgetting that, one, the journey is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to enjoy the journey as you get there. You don't play a video game just to get to the end. You play it so that you get through the whole process. You don't read a story just to read the end. You want to go through the whole process of it. You want to know all the main points, all the different facets of it. That's why it's enjoyable. You have to learn to be that way in life. If, for example, I would have sat down and written, even for 10 minutes every single day, I would have made more progress in those 2 weeks than me sitting down and trying to write for an hour. Because when you are first starting a habit and it takes that 60 days to get it set, if you start so big where it's such a huge change that the change is already, number one, going to be uncomfortable, but two, it's hard to maintain, then you start getting defocused and you start getting demotivated and you start getting into that mindset of, oh, well, if I don't do this, it's insignificant. What happened is I would end up writing about an hour every other day, maybe. But here's the thing, even if I had written every other day, but those other days I had written the 10 minutes, I would have been further along and I would have been maintaining the consistent progress, because any progress is progress. Some of you think you have to make these huge leaps and bounds, or that you have to be like consistent in the sense that every single day I have to sit down and do this and this and this, or like I had that mindset. Every single day I got to sit down, I have to write for an hour. Those are all great goals. But even if one day you sit down and you write for 20 minutes, that's still progress. You have to stop thinking about things as if they are measured only by ginormous change, because the habits that we have, the daily habits that we have, are often the things that change our overarching life sustainably, consistently, and in a way where there's balance. If you are always working in giant leaps and bounds, then that means your entire life will always be that way. That means you're going to miss out on, for example, the little moments that end up feeling insignificant maybe at the time, but end up being very important later, such as your relationships with your family. You know, sometimes it's easy to say, oh, it's just a dinner. You know, it's just one dinner. I can miss it. That one dinner could have had some sort of very pivotal conversation that was important to your journey and that person's journey, or a pivotal conversation that was so important to your relationship. If you are succeeding in one area and neglecting another, there's always going to be a certain amount of that. But if you're really doing that where there's such a huge divide between the two, it's because you're stuck in this mindset. You're stuck in this leaps and bounds mentality. You need to break out of that and start realizing that the small progress that we make every single day that seems insignificant is progress. And oftentimes that progress will get you further than these leaps and bounds, because the leaps and bounds are leaps and bounds because they are leaps and bounds and they are not sustainable to do all the time. That's why when people say, oh, they were an overnight success. Yeah, that one thing might have thrown them up to the top of the star, measurement. But how many other things did it take to get there? It's the same as a New York Times best-selling author puts out an amazing book that wins that award. But not every single book is always going to be a New York Times best-selling book. But if you get so caught up in the idea that everything you do has to be a New York Times best-selling book, you're never going to release the book. And you're never going to release anything else. So instead of releasing 10 books with 9 of them being bestsellers, you end up maybe releasing 1. Get yourself out of that mindset. You need to kick this mindset, because this has been following you around forever. And it seems insignificant, but it's actually the main problem and underlying problem of why you can't get rid of some of this other shit that's in your life. It's because of the mindset of thinking that everything has to be a leap and bound. Everything has to be end all be all. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be the best it can be. It has to be awesome and amazing and stunning and whatever. It has to be a huge leaps and bounds. It has to be a huge change. Most of the huge changes in our lives that happen over small, gradual things. And oftentimes we get caught up in the idea that certain changes are going to make us lose everything. If you really sit and you think about it, You need to get out of that fear mentality, because oftentimes in order for everything to fall apart entirely is the same as for everything to come together. It takes multiple steps. Most situations, most typically, the things that you do are not going to make every single thing in your life fall apart. If you really think about it, you'd have to actually lose all your family, lose all your friends, lose your network of people, lose all of your money, lose maybe your mental faculties, there's so many things you would have to lose in order for that to happen. So stop living in such a finite term of measurement. Stop allowing this mindset to get in your way of your progress and your success. And that is going to be your affirmation. Any progress is progress. And as always, may your life be full of light, full of love, abundance, and gratitude. I'll see you next time.